Hi, welcome everyone. Hello there, Unite for Her community. My name is Sue Weldon. I am the founder and CEO of Unite for Her, and I am honored to be hosting this month's Ask the Expert. So, a little bit of reminders. If you are joining us, and you'll see that you're on Facebook, we're streaming live. When we stream live on the series that we do every month, you have the opportunity of asking questions live of our expert. You have the opportunity to chat, hang in there with us. It's about 20 to 30 minutes. We go through a bunch of questions and answers that really just bring front of mind some really trusted, valuable information. For this month's Ask the Experts, we are brought to you by FORCE XRAY program. It takes you behind the headlines to bring your reliable information about cancer-related resource and news front and center. It will help you decipher online news and help you, understand with our trusted expert, Sue Friedman, who is the founder and executive director of FORCE. So we are so honored to have her with us today, and I'll be giving you a little bit of her bio in a minute. The other thing that we always like to bring front and center is that our Ask the Experts is one of a 3-part digital education series, and it's supported by our 2022 education sponsors, with today's presenting sponsor being West Pharmaceutical. Our supporting sponsors are Merck, Daiichi Sankyo, and GSK. We are honored to have their support. This is how we bring this trusted information directly to you. Another reminder is our Ask the Experts is monthly. And later this month, we are actually having a special edition on Sunday, which is new for us. It is on the 28th, and it's at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We will be bringing in an Emmy Award-winning makeup artist, Kareem Orange, and our beauty advisor, Jolene Hart, is going to be the MC. And they're going to together offer tips and answer your questions about makeup and skincare for women of color. We are looking forward to that additional Ask the Experts coming up at the end of the month. If you follow along with us today, you're going to see in the chat, we have a couple links, facingourrisk.org, as well as facingourrisk.org/xray. And I will have to say, I cannot tell you how incredible, thoughtful, and comprehensive this website is for XRAY. We brought it on with our new template when we redid our website, and truly honored just to have this wealth of information. There was no need for us to reinvent the wheel because the folks at FORCE are doing it so beautifully. All right, now I'm going to bring on our guest for today. And we are going to give you a little bit of her background first. Sue Friedman was a practicing small animal veterinarian when she was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 33. And afterwards, she learned that she was carrying a BRCA2 mutation. After her diagnosis, she recognized that there were gaps in information and resources for people making medical decisions around hereditary cancers. After finishing treatment, she founded Facing Our Risk of Cancer Empowered FORCE in 1999 to fill the information void for people facing adult hereditary cancer and to help them advocate for themselves. As founder and executive director of the nonprofit FORCE organization, Sue has 22 years of experience assessing and addressing the unique needs of individuals and families affected by inherited mutations associated with hereditary cancers. Please join me as I now welcome our expert guest, Sue Friedman. Hi there, Sue. You're going to be coming in 2 seconds. There you are.
Hi there. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for that great introduction. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I just love seeing you. We got to spend some nice time at ASCO together, and I was like, oh, I just love hanging out with all of my new friends here. We didn't get to see each other except for Zoom, and now we get to see each other in person. So good to see you again, even though we are back on the digital digital format. Yeah. Well, we're going to dive right in there, right into it. Yep. And we have a couple questions here. We have about, 8 to 10, but please know that, join along with us, put it in the chat, leave your questions. I'll be following along. And then I have my wonderful friend Peyton, who is behind the scenes following along too, to make sure we get all of your comments answered and questions. Okay, so to get started, Sue, why don't you just give us a definition? What exactly is health literacy, and why is it important?
That is a great question. Health literacy is really a broad definition. It's the ability to find information, understand it, and then use it to make decisions and access services related to your health. So, the finding and understanding is what we usually think of by health literacy, or even just the understanding. Does someone understand the information in front of them? But it's also being able to get to the hospital, get that care, get that prescription. So there's a lot of things that relate to health literacy that people might not think of when they think of health literacy.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of different types of health literacy. And one of the things that I really like is that, in the past we talk about health literacy and we'd say someone either had high health literacy or maybe, there'd be kind of a judgment of someone doesn't have good health literacy, and that's stigmatizing, and it puts really the weight on the person to be health literate or not. But there's now this new view of health literacy that's more of an organizational and societal health literacy that puts the responsibility on all of us, including people like you and I and advocacy groups, but also healthcare providers, to make sure that when we put information out there, we're doing it in a way that people can get that information, get those resources equitably, and use it to make decisions. So it really kind of takes that shift off of the person and puts it on all of us, society, and healthcare providers, to make sure that the information is understandable and accessible to everyone.
Yeah, I loved when you told me that. I remember when we first met and you were just talking about how it is our role, and that was why you founded Force. And I just love the way you explained it, because as a survivor, I used to feel like it was, this is me. I have to learn all this. I have to figure all this out. And just to be able to have really good resources at your fingertips could have made that so much easier, especially ones that you're trying to decipher, what is meaningful, what is relevant. So I love the stand that you're taking, Sue, and I just appreciate it greatly for the women and the men that we serve. There's another part of health literacy, and that is the digital part. Tell me a little bit about that, and why did Force decide to tackle that issue?
Yeah, that's great. And I just wanted to respond to what you said too. I mean, when you're first diagnosed and you're going through this, there is a lot of information thrown at you. It is, I've heard it described as a fire hose, and I love that because it's so accurate. And health literacy, when we use it as a label or stigma, it's kind of like you either have it or you don't, but
Right.
It's very situational. I mean, if you're not prepared for the information, or if you're overwhelmed, or there's other things going on, or your car's broken down and you can't get to the hospital, there's just so many things that affect it. So I really just wanted to reinforce what you were saying, that, there are some things people can do to, it's still, the weight is still on the person, because if you have a healthcare team and they're not making information accessible to you, if it's hard to understand, it's still to your best benefit to try and learn how to advocate for yourself and try and get that information, or say, hey, I don't understand it. And so you asked about digital health literacy, and it really is the same definition, but it just takes into account the fact that when we're looking at information online, it's a little bit different. I mean, back when I was diagnosed, it's hard to believe, but the internet was young. I mean, it was, and so I still had to go to the library to get a lot of the information. But the online landscape makes it has some particular traps that make it even more challenging for someone to try and sort through and see, is this trustworthy? Is this reliable? And so, back in 2014, we started the XRAY program because we were starting to see that people would come to us because a news article would come out about some science, and they'd be confused, like, what does this mean for me? Because the media doesn't always cover it accurately. So we'd pull the what you call peer-reviewed journal article, what the scientists wrote about the science, to see what they said. How was the study conducted? And we saw this great big difference between what the scientists said and how the media reported it. And so we thought, well, this is really part of our role, to help people understand what the scientists were really saying, not just how the media interpreted it. And then, with the pandemic, and with the internet, it just exploding. There's just so many different internet formats now and platforms that there's a lot of potential for health information to be brought forward very rapidly. And so there's a need for resources like that. So that's how we focused on it, and why we focused on the digital aspects of health literacy, trying to figure out how to use information, how to discern if it's correct and accurate and relevant to you and your situation.
Yeah, and get behind those headlines that can send you into a tizzy, right? Like, because we're all quick readers now, right? We're all very quick online on our digital platforms and reading quick, and boy, do they they make you pause when you read those headlines. So I'm so glad we're diving in and really just trying to understand some of the challenges. With that being said, can you tell me one of the biggest challenges for people trying to find accurate information of cancer online?
Yeah, there's so many, and we actually give these presentations and kind of go through the traps of online information, the things that can trip people up. I think, some of the bigger ones, the information is often sensationalized, and especially the headlines, where you'll see terms like cure and holy grail and on the positive side, things that look too good to be true and probably are, and then on the negative side, things like scandal or poison, these things that really evoke a reaction in you, but that may not be what the information was really about. So there's a sensational, and then there's the inaccurate, where they either got the science wrong or they got the statistics wrong. We see that a lot, where, and it's usually not on purpose. It's just not an understanding of how the study was developed. And oftentimes there's key pieces of information that are missing, like this was a study in mice. Or, this was a very early pilot study of 5 people, which probably isn't big enough to really generate the evidence that we need to change what we do. So, those types of things. There's that unmoderated space where people chime in with their experiences, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with people sharing their experiences, but it's important to look at one person's experience and not draw these wide conclusions based on it. And, there's those sales pitches that are disguised as news, but, news shouldn't be trying to sell you something. And then there's something called confirmation bias. And I think this is one that we've started to really focus on because it really is unique to the online situation. And that is, have you ever gone and looked for, red shoes or red dress, and then suddenly in your feed there's all these ads for red shoes or red dress? And, those are algorithms. Those are ways that some of these platforms use to deliver information that people are more likely to click on. So if you were looking for something, then these algorithms, start feeding you a bunch of similar information. And the problem with that is that, as people, we're kind of hardwired to think the more we hear something, the more likely it is to be true. But, just because 72 people uploaded a video about a particular topic, that doesn't mean it's true. So and that's called confirmation bias, this idea that, oh, I saw that before. Okay. Oh, and I'm seeing it again. Well, look, here's 5 other people who said the same thing, that can really get in our heads and say, oh, there must be something to this. So those are all, there's a lot more traps out there, just how quickly a search engine can return all this information. But those are some of the biggest ones. And I'm sure you have experienced. I know I have.
Yeah, we all have. And, I actually, Maxine from our audience is on, and she was commenting that, and it is so upsetting. Like, social media can just be so upsetting when you hear misinformation. And this was a cancer coach. So you hear cancer coach, right? And they posted that the American Cancer Society, another very established organization, he is now probably misquoting them, and saying that 70% of the women who die of breast cancer wouldn't have died if they would have changed their diet. And it just is like, for me to hear that, like, oh, it just feels like, how did we fail? Like, that is so not, that's so not good, right? Like, it's so not good that they, information out there.
One of the challenges too is that a lot of times some of these diet and nutrition and exercise research, it's done on a population basis. So they can say, well, eating a good diet lowers the risk, and the average person by, or the population by 70%. But what that means to the individual hasn't been studied in that way. And the effect itself on any one person versus the entire population may be really small. I'm not saying, there's a lot of good reasons to have a good diet, a healthy diet, as healthy as possible, exercise if you can. But we don't always know how that affects the individual or would affect the individual. And certainly it's not helpful when you've already been diagnosed. And I got it too. I'm sure you get it. You're walking around, you're in treatment, you're bald. And so suddenly people come up to you and they want to tell you why you got cancer, even though they don't know you, I had that happen so many times. So,
And it's just one more reason that we're doubting ourselves. Like, there's one thing for information. Information is powerful. We created Unite for Her on it, and it's so good to be empowered by different types of integrative therapies and nutrition. And it saved me. It saved me. There also is a thing of us feeling guilty. Like, please don't make me feel like I caused my cancer, right? And that is where that is so defeating, so defeating to us as human beings and to our emotional state. And that's where we're going to give you some tips and tricks. So that is going to be the next one. And I know you have all kinds of good tricks. Susan, you have great tricks for trying to check out health information that someone sends you. So why don't you get started on a little bit of that?
Yeah, that's great. Great question. Just a few things. One is make sure it's legitimate. The article is legitimate, and part of that is checking where did it come from, who's the source. But also if it's like one of those emails. So I had a friend who sent me an email. It was like good information to have, and it was about COVID, and it was, it supposedly originated from an expert in infectious disease at Johns Hopkins. Well, first thing I did, I went to the Johns Hopkins website and looked at their faculty and Googled that person, and they're not on staff. And then I Googled that information and put in Johns Hopkins, and they had actually put up a page saying, this is not from us, don't follow this information. Yep. So that took me about 10 minutes to kind of sort through it. And so one of the first things I'd say is if someone sends you an article, try and do a little sleuthing. Certainly don't make decisions on it yet. And try not to pass it on to other relatives, like the email that I got from my friend. She was sharing it as this is good information to have. And it had this long list of other people who had forwarded it down the line. And so just take a pause point and do a little research on that information and see if they're quoting experts. Are they real experts? Are they real experts in that area? Because, just because someone has a doctor or PhD after their name doesn't mean they're an expert in that particular topic. And we see that sometimes where people will, their expertise is in a completely different field, but they've veered off and maybe they've developed the expertise, but, it's a good idea to have a cautious eye, before you share that information. Seeing if it's too good to be true, then it probably is. Check and see when that information, if you can find the information, check and see when it was published and where it was published. So was it published in the website of, a organization trying to sell something, like a cure or a book or a natural remedy? Because again, like I said before, news shouldn't try and sell you something. News should be news, and science news even. It shouldn't be trying to sell you something. And, again, just do a little digging. And if you have questions about it, then ask people that you can trust, like, potentially your healthcare team too. Is this a legitimate person?
Yeah, I always say follow the money trail too, right? So,
if you can. Sometimes they hide it really well, and then suddenly it's like, there it is. They're, they're trying to sell you.
Yeah, I know. It's like that self-interest, and unfortunately it's at our expense, which is just so upsetting as survivors, right?
But it's been monetized. I mean, everything on the internet, like so many other businesses, the internet itself, and news outlets. I mean, there is a financial benefit to getting more traffic. And so some of the ways that, that's engineered can be to our detriment.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I know that, there's some good tricks too that you have for just like searching, right? Because we're all searching online. You sort of talked about that. It's interesting because you're like this puzzle and you're putting all these pieces together, because if we end up forwarding things and we're a part of that confirmation, what did you call it?
Confirmation bias. Good. That's great. Yeah.
So you're just putting it all together, and it's just like, right, like, don't be a part of the problem, just take a pause. And we're so quick, I mean, I can be guilty of that. We're so quick, and just really understand, just because you see John Hopkins doesn't mean it's John Hopkins. Just because
right.
you see something in your feed that seems legit, right? And must be like the American Cancer Society, which was not association, which was not, but we thought, has background, it has credibility. So there's some more tips and tricks. Give us.
Yeah. Well, with the case of that person, the professor that really wasn't too, I actually saw an article on Snopes.com about it. So Snopes, SNOPES, is a good fact checking online organization, and they said this is misattributed. So that's part of what they do. There's a really great website called PubMed, and it's from the government. It's from the National Library of Medicine, and it's at med.gov, G-O-V, and you can look up pretty much any publication. Unfortunately, the results you get in PubMed are often very full of jargon, but it can allow you to get a sense of how many times has this been published. And oftentimes, sometimes you can't read the full article, even if you could get past the jargon, because the full article is locked behind a paywall and you have to pay for it. But they will publish an abstract, which gives you an overview of what that information is about. So if I'm looking at something and it's the first I've heard about it, like I've not heard of this connection before, I often will go to PubMed, do a search, see how many articles there are about it, and just get a general idea. Are they confirming that relationship or not? And kind of looking at the more recent the more recent studies. So that's one place to go. Some other places, the American Cancer Society is great. Trusted advocacy organizations like Unite for Her, like FORCE, the American Cancer Society, the National Cancer Institute, so that's cancer.gov. They have a really great website. And then the American Society of Clinical Oncology, also known as ASCO, they keep up to date cancer.net, and they have a really great plain language patient facing site that has really good information as well. And then the other one that I'll mention is the National Comprehensive Cancer Network, or nccn.org. This is a group that is made up of multiple top cancer centers that put together guidelines every year, and they keep the guidelines updated annually on what latest standard of care is. And that's really important because, oftentimes when you're reading a research article, it's more about something new and exciting and not yet standard of care. So, it takes a lot of evidence, building a lot of evidence and a lot of research before something moves from okay, this is experimental, this is exciting, this is cutting edge, to this has now been so well validated that most of the experts think this should be standard of care. So NCCN is part of developing those guidelines, and that's another good site. They have some patient-facing guideline booklets that are really easy to read as well.
Yeah, I love it. I know Kathy ended up commenting, and I put her comment there. Unite for Her we're a great resource, but guess where we get our information when it comes to this? You, right? Like, we're going to make sure we get the best information, and we go to FORCE and we go to Sue, and we have so many partners and so many advisors and associates, and just being able to be at our fingertips that we can get the best thoughtful, comprehensive information right to you. And additionally, that's why we started this whole online platform, this whole education series. So thank you for sharing so much with us, Sue. All right, I'm going to go on to the next one. So tell me about FORCE. So what is FORCE's XRAY program and how does it help people?
Yes, thank you for that. We love X-ray. X-ray is an acronym. It's not a real X-ray, and it stands for Examining the Relevance of Articles for You. And it's really meant to bridge that gap between what was written in the peer-reviewed journal article, what that said, what the scientist said, how the science was set up, and between that and what the media says, which sometimes they don't do a good job getting that accurate. The other part of it for us, so we take the science and we distill it down into plain language. But the other part of that is, when you read an article about health, you might be reading it because medicine's cool and science is cool. Sometimes I'll read a story because it's like, wow, that's cool. But a lot of times, especially health information, what I want to know is, what does this mean for me and my decision making? Or what does it mean for my family members, my relatives? Or, on a larger scale, what does it mean for the community that we serve at Force? So what we do with each review, each article, is that we break it down and we provide a meter score that gives you a scale from low to high as far as how guideline changing is this? How much does this change your medical decision making? Because that's really what people want to know. Is this really early research and not ready for prime time, or is this something that has been now added to the guidelines? We want people to be able to see that at a glance. And if it's not guideline changing, part of what we do for an X-ray review is we talk about what the current guidelines say. And I'll give you an example. Several years ago, there was a study and they were looking at cells, mostly in mice, cancer cells in mice, and they fed them the large amounts of an amino acid known as asparagine. And they were really trying to develop a new model to look at cancer metastasis and figure out new targets for treating it. And what they found was this amino acid called asparagine. When they took it and really purified it and fed large quantities to mice, it made their cancers more likely to metastasize. But this was in mice. This was not amounts found in foods. And there was really nothing about it that said that this was something that people should do, change their diet, anything like that. Next thing you know, there's a media article that says, bunk this veggie, stop eating asparagus. Well, no, that's not what the science said. And, asparagine is in asparagus, but asparagine is also in many other foods. And there was not, it was not fed to mice in the way that that a person would consume it. There was nothing in that article to suggest that asparagus is bad for you. And in fact, asparagus is good for you. It's part of a good diet, So that's where they kind of get it wrong. And they just misread the science or exaggerated it. So we gave that a relevance score of low so that people know, don't bunk this veggie, don't stop eating asparagus. Yeah. This is cool science. Here's what it said, but it's not ready for you to change your diet or anything yet. Versus, new science that's guideline changing because it's that important, and we'll tell people, give it a meter score of high. So that's the basic gist of X-ray. We also include clinical trials and other relevant resources so that people can find more information, and we break it down by topics. So we have different topics, including nutrition and integrative medicine, treatment, biomarker testing, genetic testing, quality of life. And so people can search by the topic, and about once every other week or so, we release a new X-ray review on some science that has been reported in the media. And we actually pull the actual scientific study and read it and figure out, what was it about? What were they trying to show? And what did they actually show? So that people don't have to spend hours trying to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, I so appreciate that, Sue, because we have such limited time, and you get the information. You want to be really aware of what is out there in the news and be a good, student of the news, but it takes a lot of time. And sometimes those, peer article reviews or the journal reviews, they're hard to comprehend. And you take it and just break it down. You give it a score. I love the whole system. It's so easy to navigate. So if you guys that are on, we have quite a few listeners watching us now, but this will be recorded. Please get on their website, like check it out. Get on our website. We're going to take it to their website and just check it out. And so that you can see like, wow, they really break it down. It's thoughtful. It's easy for me to digest. And they're giving it a score that's based on science and research that they did hours on, which is just vital, at least for me, I know, and a lot of our women that are just, busy, and want to be educated, not having the time to review all these. So thank you for that, Sue. Really appreciate it. And, there is, when we don't have the right information, there can be harm there, right? Like there can be harm there. So tell me a little bit about, what is the harm of the health misinformation? I know as a survivor how it made me feel, emotionally. Just thinking like during that time when I was trying to digest all the information, mine was very nutrition based too, the information I was trying to digest. And I just had to like almost take a step back and breathe and go, okay, if I end up, eating and drinking everything that I was told to eat and drink because it's good for me for one reason or another, I'd be eating and drinking all day long. It was exhausting, like trying to figure out what I can do better. And I just had to take a step back and figure out what worked for me and get different types of resources and come together and think about what my nutrition plan forward was going to be. But I remember those days. It was a lot. Yeah.
It's so overwhelming. And I did want to add one other thing about X-ray. We do take requests. So if anyone sees something in the media and you want us to X-ray it, we're happy to do that. We love getting requests. But, I really hear you because I went through the same thing, especially after I finished treatment. And because I had experienced a early recurrence and I was afraid of a second recurrence. And I did everything I read. But, you can read one article and it's about one approach and one aspect or one nutrient. But then you read another one about another nutrient, but that doesn't mean they're going to be additive or that you need to do both or you need to do it all. It's really hard to know, what it means for you, which is why we try and break it down with some cautions because, there is that emotional harm. It's not harmless to go through that. Oh my goodness, am I making the wrong decision? Am I doing the wrong thing? We saw an article like that was just like, it suggested that the writer was suggesting maybe I made a mistake having a double mastectomy when really when you read the article, she wasn't even saying she had. So it was just this very emotionally compelling and upsetting headline, that really gets you to click on it. But, not all medical information is equally harmful. Some of it is really, if you're going to use it and weigh it in your decision making, that's when it does have the potential for causing harm. That's where you really want to take a pause, think about it, share it with your healthcare team, see if it really is relevant to you, or is it based on a study in mice, or is it someone trying to sell you something? So, it's harmful when it may impact the decisions you make, the decisions you don't make. But, be really careful to not assume something's harmless because it sounds harmless. And one of those examples is like the term natural, which is used everywhere. Just because something's natural doesn't make it harmless. And I use the example of poison hemlock, which is very harmful, but it is natural. So being careful about things that maybe would make sense because natural is something that we might be accustomed to, or our body might be accustomed to. But, in very large quantities, even the most benign things, including water and salt, can be very harmful for you. So just, kind of keeping that in mind and not assuming that information is harmless.
Yeah. Thank you for that. We did get a comment from Dina, and she was just asking, she missed it early on. And I figured I'll let you answer it. How does she find out the score on a particular website or article? Can you go through that again?
Yeah, so we actually score the articles, the research that we're reviewing at the time. So it is actually located on the X-ray review. So if you're reading a review and it's looking at, there was one we did recently about melatonin and how more people are using it for sleep aid, and that there's concerns around it because we don't know a lot about long-term effects of it. And so if you see that article on Unite for Her, because I think you guys shared that one, you'll see a meter score that says it has a relevant score, and we rate it low to high. And then we have a strength of science. So how vigorous was the science? Was it a large study? How conclusive was it? And then we also talk about where it is on the research timeline, so people know if it was research on animals like mice or in the lab versus research in people. So you would find that attached to the X-ray review.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. All right, Dina. So hopefully you got that. You can just get right on that website, and the link is right there as well if you follow the chat here. We had a couple other questions from Bonnie and Kate. I think I can answer them real quick, but confirm for me. Bonnie was asking what the website was for a medical oncologist. Is that the ASCO site were you talking about?
Oh, yeah. So it's cancer.net.
Okay.
The American Society for Clinical Oncology. They curate this website, and it's, for your average person, but
Yeah.
it's developed by experts.
Awesome. Awesome. And then Kate, this is actually all this information, which is so incredible. She does it for all cancers. It's not just breast cancer, it's for all cancers. So she asked if it was for gynecological cancers as well. And it's for all cancers. So
Yeah, we focus. Oh, sorry.
no, go
I was
for it.
going to say we focus on 6 main cancers because they're the ones that our organization focuses on. So we do breast, ovarian, endometrial, colorectal, and pancreatic and prostate.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Sue. Thank you so much. So I have one last question for you, only because, we do have to be good advocates, right? And we have to be an advocate for ourselves, and we can't pass judgment on ourselves. I always feel like my first advice to women when we're newly diagnosed or when we're going through a cancer treatment is, be gentle on yourself, right? No judgment, and figure out how to dive in and have, meaningful conversations. And one of them is with your doctor, right? And
Yes.
approaching your doctor. So how do you suggest approaching your doctor to ask about a research study, that you
Yeah.
read about online? I think that's a great, way to end our Ask the Experts today.
That's a great question because not all of us are comfortable talking to our doctor about research, and not all doctors are comfortable receiving those questions. And health communication is really important, but not all healthcare professionals receive the same training in it. So these are just my suggestions, but I'd say certainly try it out. And the more you practice talking to your healthcare team, the better, the better you'll get with it. But I would say start by asking your doctor how they prefer to receive information. Put them kind of on notice. Say, once in a while I'll read an article that seems to relate to my situation. How would you prefer me to discuss that with you? And some may say, send it to the nurse navigator, or send me an email, or print it up and bring it in at the next visit. So I would start by kind of giving them an opportunity to tell you how they want to hear about it. And then I would say this: if you can, try and do some research ahead of time, because it's very tempting to look at every headline and get really excited. And after 25 years of patient advocacy, there are some things that are truly exciting and landmark, and I've really had the honor of being able to see those in 25 years of advocacy. But not every article is equally groundbreaking, even if the media says it is. So try and do some of your own do some of your own digging around first to see, is this really for cancers like mine? Is this for situations like mine? So that you're not overwhelming your doctor, because they are really busy. And then once you have those two things in place, if it is an article you want input on, then you share it with your healthcare professional the way that they've expressed that they prefer it to be shared. And then I think it's reasonable to expect that they'll spend the time giving you more input on it. I wanted to say one other thing because I want to promote another initiative from Force called Spot the Boast. And that is our, it's another initiative like XRAY, and the goal is to help people with some of these tips, and there are additional tips on the Spot the Boast website. And so that's facingourrisk.org/boast, BOAST, and BOAST stands for some of the red flags of online health information like biased, overblown, amateur, sales focused, too early to be useful, and taken out of context. And we have a lot of other tips there for, communicating it and for digging a little deeper before you share the information with your healthcare team.
Yeah, it's so good. Thank you. And I know that Maxine actually asked us just about the article, and I saw that Peyton dropped that in the chat there for you, Maxine. So if you could take a look on the melatonin article, so you could read everything there. She was just asking more about the result of that review, and you can find that right on Facing Our Risk. So that is so good. And thank you all for the folks that were joining us and participating in our chat. Kate, I love that you're giving us information here about covering clear cell cancers as well. Sue is shaking her head like we.
Yeah, send them along. If you see an article, ask us to X-ray it.
Absolutely. We are here. Like we want to hear what is important for you. Absolutely. Please let us know so that we can be helpful and really do our part, to get that information to you. So, so that's the end. That's it. Sue, thanks for joining.
Thank
that was
you.
easy enough, right?
Thank you for inviting me, and always an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, so good. Well, we just love having this type of series. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. As a reminder, we are going to be running that Ask the Experts once again at the end of the month. So make sure you see, take a look at our feed. We'll see it in social media. It's on a Sunday, so it's a little different for us on the 28th at 11 o'clock. And that way we're going to be just going over, with this incredible Emmy award-winning makeup artist. That is going to be able to.
That's exciting.
I know, Corrine Orange, and she's going to be able to walk us through and just trying to bring, great topics front of mind. And again, just like you guys can give topics to Sue, please give them to us as well. We're all ears. What do you want to hear, right? What do you want to see? What can we do to make sure that we're getting the best topics, front of mind and really, comprehensive for you to understand them? Again, this digital, series could not be as possible without our sponsors. So we are most grateful to our presenting sponsor, West Pharmaceuticals today, and our supporting sponsors, Merck, Daiichi Sankyo, and GSK. They have truly been a partner in every sense of the word, and it just helps us be, here for the community that we serve, which is growing nationwide. So thank you all for joining us. That ends our Ask the Experts for today, and it's a great way to start a Monday. So thank you, Sue.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great rest of your week.
You got it. Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a great day, and thank you for joining us. And this will be recorded, and it will be housed on our website under her library. All right. Have a good day. Bye-bye.